John Woo's Stranglehold is an incredible video game on paper. It's a sequel to a quintessential Hong Kong action movie, that movie being John Woo's Hard Boiled from 1992, which starred Chow Yun-fat as a badass clarinet player named Inspector Tequila, and it was designed in the same vein as Max Payne, being a bullet-time acrobatic third-person shooter. In fact, Max Payne was made to be something of a video game version of the Hong Kong shoot-'em-up movies that John Woo helped popularize and shape, so everything came full circle in a way when Midway developed and released Stranglehold in 2007. This game gives you, or at least it gives me, every reason to want to love it. Even just watching this gameplay, there's a certain mesmerizing dance to it. Like, it certainly gets John Woo's visual flair down in its own early Unreal 3 engine looking way. Doves fly around, sparks fly everywhere, tables, chairs, and everything on them cracks, crumbles, and explodes, and it's a sight to behold. The amount of destruction that you can cause in this game really is something, and it's still impressive to this day. Like, it's fun walking into a squeaky clean location, knowing that it'll be torn to shreds once you're done with it. Everything's lined up for this to be an absolute knockout. Like, John Woo, Hard Boiled, and Max Payne are all fantastic, and while Stranglehold may look fantastic from the outside, it is a little harder to recommend. Take the gameplay. As beautiful as it is to watch, there are some hiccups with how it flows. You have a huge incentive to play the game stylishly as a way to get a high score and fill up an ability meter, and playing stylishly means killing baddies by shooting out the floor below them or shooting down signs above them. Basically, you get style points for environmental kills, which is great as it means you're constantly scanning the screen for more than just the enemies. It's a little bit more involved. Playing stylishly also means playing acrobatically by diving around and jumping on ledges and sliding over tables and swinging on hanging lights and sliding down handrails, and of course diving onto roll carts. You'd expect all of this stuff to be in a John Woo shooting game. Now imagine for a second that you're a game designer. How would you implement these environmental acrobatics? Like, think for a second about how you would make it intuitive for someone to jump on a handrail and run along the top of it, for example. I'm guessing most of you would probably have a simple jump button, and if you jumped and guided your landing onto a rail, you'd magnet to that rail. Games like Sunset Overdrive or many of the 3D Sonic games handle it this way, or maybe you'd have a button to lock yourself into the rail like a Tony Hawk game. I feel like I have a quota to mention Tony Hawk in every video at this point. Stranglehold doesn't quite do it like you'd think. Like, you do have a jump button, or rather a dive button, much like Max Payne. However, if you're near and facing an environmental element that you can interact with, like a railing or a roll cart, a white highlight will appear on top of it, and if you press the dive button while you can see that highlight, you'll jump onto the highlighted environmental object instead of just doing a regular dive. There's no timing of your jump or aiming your landing, it's just go towards a thing until it's highlighted and press a button to hop on. It almost doesn't need to be said that doing this doesn't feel very intuitive. It feels sticky and too guided and artificial. Like, it's not me physically hopping on that railing, it's the game doing it when I told it to, and that's a shame, but even if it felt great, it just doesn't work that well. Like, take this moment for example. I'm sliding down a railing shooting bad guys. It's basically as cool as it gets. The level designers put a roll cart conveniently at the bottom of the stairs for me to jump off the railing and land on the cart. So I time my dive to perfection and land on the cart, but because the game didn't recognize my intentions before I jumped, it didn't highlight the cart for me, even though I timed everything to line up. So I just awkwardly bounced off the top of it. Had I waited a few seconds for the cart to highlight, disobeying my intuition with what I know is the natural arc of the dive, then I would have pulled it off. And stuff like this just happens throughout. You will get used to it to a point, but while a dozen enemies are shooting at you, and while sparks and debris are flying everywhere, and while your eyes are scanning the screen for health packs and weapons and environmental kills, you'll want this acrobatic system to be more reliable than it is. You'll often find yourself diving over something when you want to jump on it, or you'll be flying past that hanging light that you wanted to swing from, or the reverse will happen. You'll want to dive, but instead you'll magnet onto a countertop or something. It can feel really cluttered. You'll automatically do a cool guy movie slide over most waist-high objects by just walking into them, and you'll also automatically melee enemies by just walking into them too, making Stranglehold feel like you're guiding Inspector Tequila around at times rather than directly controlling him. And sometimes, if the game doesn't think you'll safely land a dive off a ledge, it simply won't let you dive and it will ignore your input. So there's a certain loose, floaty, sometimes unnatural feeling to the way Tequila handles, which isn't helped by the recoil and bullet spread being really high unless you're in bullet time, where it's dead accurate. Aiming isn't easy in real time as it is because the game is so fast paced, so limiting your aiming with a radial bullet spray just feels unrewarding when you know you're aiming well and the bullets are flying past enemies anyway. Also, just as an aside, the bullet time here is called tequila-time, which is just great. So that was a fairly negative and dry mechanical deep dive to open this video with, but I wanted to start here because all this stuff sticks out so much in a game that's otherwise really close to being something exceptional. And don't get me wrong, I actually really like Stranglehold and I'd easily recommend it. Like, when you get used to how it works, there are moments where everything harmonizes to create this exciting visceral symphony of sparks and physics objects and enemy ragdolls just flying around everywhere. I love that the shotgun is incredibly punchy and powerful, and I loved using it at every opportunity, and toggling in and out of slow motion is snappy, and while the gunshots could sound punchier, the sound design is otherwise great as you hear everything smash around you. The soundtrack is summer action flick in the best way with a great main theme, and the kill confirmation sound is satisfying and pitch shifts up as you combo kills together. Audio-visually, Stranglehold is such a treat. Unlike Max Payne, which mostly keeps enemies in front of you while you keep moving forward, Stranglehold is often happy to drop you in the middle of an arena and spawn enemies all around you. One of the best moments in the entire game sees Tequila walk out of a lift into a fancy high-class restaurant with a jazz band playing, then because you're a cop you must protect the band from dying while enemies pile into the room and while they keep playing high-tempo jazz music. You circle around the room shooting bad guys while learning where you can be acrobatic, learning where the health packs are for when you need them, and learning where cover is for when you need it. I should mention that there's a surprisingly decent cover system here, which, while it won't help you get a high score, it will help you when you're finding it tough to survive, so it's more useful on higher difficulties. You can also flip tables to hide behind, which is fittingly cool. After you've filled up your ability meter by being stylish, killing bad guys, and picking up paper cranes that are lying around, you can use a quarter of it to partially heal, half of it to basically get a free kill with an aimed shot, 3/4 of it to be invulnerable and deal high damage for about 10 seconds, or all of it to do a spinning attack killing everyone around you. Those last two look awesome, feel awesome, and are the ones that you'll want to save up for. So the arena battles like that jazz one become really engaging affairs of circling around, learning and destroying the level around you, and stylishly shooting enemies while building up your ability meter, allowing you to take out even more enemies. Because Stranglehold is more than happy to spawn bad guys behind you, you constantly need to think on your feet and expect to be ambushed, and since these arenas give you time to learn your surroundings, it's up to you to improvise to some extent. Especially on harder difficulties, you'll need to make split-second decisions on whether you dive into cover or run for a health pack or use an ability or do some acrobatic stuff. Much like jazz itself, it's all about improvisation, and these levels are your instruments. When it all flows together, it is exceptional, and these high points in Stranglehold are worth playing the game for. But contrast that jazz band level against the game's earlier second location, which probably should have been cut from the game entirely. It's a slog through this visually ugly island where, rather than there being any well-designed arenas, it's instead just bad platforming and scanning every corner of the level for drug labs that you need to destroy, because if you miss one, you'll have to tediously backtrack to find it. It takes forever, there's nothing redeeming about it, and if that wasn't enough, it culminates in an incredibly long, boring, and trivially easy turret section, and after that turret section it just goes straight back into boring fetch quest stuff, making you plant bombs in certain locations. Thankfully, no other levels in the game make you tick off a list of objectives, and there's no other turret sections in the whole game. In fact, aside from the occasional bullet sponge boss battles, the way the rest of the levels are framed and designed is typically strong. There's another location I really like set in a museum, and at the end of each level the game tells you the cost of the damage you did, which is a really fun stat, especially after shooting down millions of dollars worth of historical artifacts. So looking at this collection of levels as a whole, it feels like it's 90% great fitting, well-structured locations and levels, and that last 10% being that island level is really terrible. And almost every aspect of Stranglehold as a whole can be described as 90% great and 10% kind of sloppy and in need of reworking or cutting. Like the way the shootouts control is mostly smooth and snappy and fun, but then they to some extent fumble with the acrobatics or the weapon inaccuracy. It's a matter of how much you can tolerate that bad 10%. Every now and then you'll be forced into a scripted standoff where you have to lean to avoid bullets while shooting the bad guys. You probably get the gist of how these work just by seeing them in action. Unfortunately, they're overly simple and frankly a bit annoying. You occasionally can't avoid getting hit and they interrupt the flow of the regular gameplay. It's not a big deal because there's not that many of them, but like that island level, these probably just should have been cut. Then there's the story and the cutscenes, which are more blatantly bad. Chow Yun-fat reprises his role as Inspector Tequila, but no other characters from Hard Boiled return here, which is disappointing as a fan of the film, and I had to rewatch the game's cutscenes and look it up on Wikipedia just to recall a lot of what happened. Which, by the way, Wikipedia has an incredibly extensive write-up on a plot that's essentially just an evil gangster kidnapping story, but it's so extensive because the story is overly complex with too many characters coming and going, and needless flashbacks. At some point, I just found it really hard to care. The animations are pretty wonky at times, and for some reason the game is in English, despite the movie being in Cantonese. The accents are all over the place, and the acting is just flat out terrible.
Are you sorry you fell in love with me?
Never, but I'm frightened. It's not just the two of us anymore.
What are you saying?
We're going to have a child.
We are? That's great.
No, it's terrible. If my father finds out, he'll kill us all.
Even Jimmy Wong wouldn't kill his own grandchild.
You don't know him the way I do.
Then come away with me.
He'll find us.
No, he won't.
Why they brought Chow Yun-fat back but then made him speak English is just baffling, really. I really just wish there was a Cantonese option. There are some cool moments though, or at least moments that would be cool if the acting and cutscenes were better. Like, it would be cool seeing Tequila ignore his bosses and co-workers' advice to go in alone or calmly light a cigarette while surrounded by enemies, but it's just executed way too awkwardly. Now, the movie Hard Boiled wasn't exactly Shakespeare, and it was definitely the action scenes that made that movie what it was, so it's great that they to some extent captured that action here, but the storytelling in Hard Boiled was enjoyable and charming enough to support the action, whereas here I wouldn't blame you for skipping every cutscene. You wouldn't miss much.
I had to leave you. To keep you and Tico safe.
You should have trusted me.
I loved you. Wasn't that enough?
But thankfully, none of this matters when the game is at its best, and for the most part, it actually is. It's a flawed game, sure, but in just how the combat flows, it's still really thoughtfully designed. If you initially feel that something's off, it's worth ignoring that feeling and putting in a concerted effort to engage with how these mechanics work. When I first played Stranglehold years ago, I actually bounced off it pretty hard after just about an hour or so. The movement and aiming felt floaty and weird, and the field of view was a bit too low, and the story was just awful, and once I'd played some of that island level, I'd had enough. But in retrying it for this review, Stranglehold really hooked me, partly because I played on PC this time instead of on console, and I think that using a field of view fix and aiming with a mouse helps a lot, especially because the aiming dead zone on console is massive, and partly because I turned off a setting that automatically puts you in slow motion sometimes, but also because I simply gave it more of a chance. I'm worried that this review might seem more negative than I want it to. The reason I've structured it this way by focusing so much on the negatives isn't because Stranglehold is a bad game. In fact, it's a really solid game that deserves more attention. It's more because I'm just frustrated by how close it is to being excellent. I love what it's trying to do so much that it bothers me that when describing it, I have to be like, it's really fun, but you have to put up with a few things to get the most out of it, and maybe it isn't as good as it sounds. I just really want to love Stranglehold more than I do. But on balance, I still ultimately recommend Stranglehold. There's nothing else quite like it when the soundtrack gets going while you're smashing your way through an expensive penthouse or an old temple, or even just an underground car park or Hong Kong back alley scoring headshots or sending people flying with that great shotgun. The highs here are fantastic, and with a really short runtime of only around 4 hours, it's so consumable and fun that you'll want to hop right back in on a harder difficulty to play through it again, which is exactly what I did. You might also want to replay it to earn points to buy unlockable concept art or behind the scenes videos of John Woo himself as he stands behind a bar. There's a lot of neat stuff here, like footage of an early version of the game running on the PsyOps engine and a tutorial on how to make a paper crane by a supposed origami master named Jonathan Devon, who also happens to be listed as an environmental artist in the credits. It's curious and convenient that they had a master of origami on staff. There's also a video called Zipline Prototype, which is just shots of wooden mannequin ziplining with action music behind it, which is unusual. You can also buy skins for the multiplayer mode here, which is now only playable on 360. So with a big thanks to those of you in my Discord who came along to revive this multiplayer for an evening, we managed to play about a dozen or so games of it, and it is very old school in a lot of ways. It feels like a PlayStation 2 era shooter with deathmatch and team deathmatch modes, floating weapons around the map, and a very, very high time to kill unless you use one of the better weapons like the golden gun or the rocket launcher, which are usually in harder to reach spots. There's a lot of circle strafing, and because aiming on console is a bit weird, it's just generally quite a silly affair. What's interesting about this multiplayer is that they tried to bring over every single mechanic from the single player, including all the abilities, and even the slow motion, where if anyone activates it, then the whole server slows down. So if there's a battle going on and someone uses tequila-time while you're wandering around on the other side of the map, then you gotta wander around in slow motion now. Thankfully, unlike in single player, your tequila-time bar has to be full for you to use it, so it's not quite as annoying as it sounds. In fact, at this point, it's more of an amusing novelty. Because it usually takes so many bullets to kill anyone, the abilities become really vital. The final spin attack basically kills everyone around you, and you're invulnerable while using it, so it's worth running around the map, avoiding fights, and collecting cranes to build up your meter. With the weapon pickups and finding cranes, there's a justified reason to use the traversal mechanics here, and man, with the added pressure of human opponents, the problems with the acrobatics are amplified tenfold, because missing a jump is life and death in multiplayer. So really, this is quite a janky and sort of unbalanced multiplayer mode at the end of the day. I had a blast playing it for this video, but after a couple of hours, I was done with it, and apparently it wasn't very popular, which isn't surprising at all. Stranglehold really feels like it could have used some tightening up or a sequel just to smooth out its rough edges, and in fact there was a sequel in development called Gunrunner, which was slated for release in late 2009 for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. And before continuing, I just want to quickly say that most of the information about this game was researched and put together by Liam Robertson for Unseen 64 back in 2014. I'm essentially just relaying a lot of their work here, so full credit goes to Robertson and Unseen 64 on this one, and their article on Gunrunner will be linked in the description. The most interesting and frankly funny thing about Gunrunner is that it was going to co-star Vin Diesel. Its campaign was going to be a buddy cop story entirely playable in co-op, where one person plays as Tequila and the other as Diesel, who may or may not have ended up being the same character that he was in Midway's Wheelman. The narrative simply hadn't been developed far enough so that it wasn't finalized, and really the whole game hadn't been developed very far, having never made it past pre-production. Still though, there's thankfully quite a lot known about what Gunrunner was going to be. And it was going to be a much more traditional cover shooter than Stranglehold was. There wasn't going to be any slow motion in the game, it seems that there wasn't nearly as much acrobatics, and as far as it's known, John Woo wasn't involved at all. They were really just making more of a typical cover shooter in the vein of Gears of War, and in naming it Gunrunner rather than Stranglehold 2, they were attempting to rebrand it to hit a wider audience than Stranglehold did, and hopefully kickstart a franchise out of it. The standoff and precision aim stuff from Stranglehold was going to be repurposed as human shield hostage scenarios, and without the hook of slow motion here, one of the big selling points was going to be destructibility. Where so much of the world crumbled to pieces in Stranglehold, here they were extending that to entire buildings being destructible, and as early as this tech is, it looks like it was going to be quite impressive, assuming they pulled it off without making too many technical concessions. Another selling point was going to be driving sections, with Wheelman's driving framework making an appearance here. One player would have driven, and the other would have shot the bad guys in what looks like some heavily scripted driving segments. This really does look like a strange blend of both Wheelman and Stranglehold in every way, which, if you know me, sounds very much like a game I'd appreciate and one I'd have definitely covered on this channel. That said, knowing what they were trying to do here, my personal gut feeling is a bit disappointed that they weren't really making a direct sequel to what Stranglehold was, because I want Stranglehold's problems to be fixed. But hey, there's actually not a lot of great co-op shooter campaigns out there, especially not back then, and the concept of Chow Yun-Fat and Vin Diesel teaming up is incredibly amusing, so maybe it could have been something great. Like, ignoring Stranglehold's existence, this does sound like a fun time, but it's impossible to speculate how it would have turned out really, with this game's development not getting very far. It's just really a neat curiosity at this point. It was cancelled in December of 2008 among Midway's financial troubles after a brief attempt to rework the entire thing into a completely new game with the same name. At some point, Gunrunner was going to be an open-world co-op game set in Eastern Europe, starring two undercover agents working together to take down the international gun trade. It never really made it past being a concept, so all there is to show for it is some concept art. So sadly, we've never quite seen another game that's properly tried to capture this specific subgenre of films outside of Stranglehold. The closest you get is Jet Li Rise to Honor and Sleeping Dogs, which are both games I really enjoy too and have very Woo-esque moments, but I'd argue that they took a lot more from martial arts movies. And then there's more cursory games like Max Payne and Wet and Wanted Weapons of Fate and a couple of the Matrix games, which all pull off a similar gun-fu sort of thing, but their aesthetics lie elsewhere. The doors are still open for a developer to really nail and fully capture that specific Hong Kong John Woo action movie vibe that Stranglehold gets so close with, so hopefully someday we do see a spiritual successor to it. As it stands, Stranglehold is something of a cult favorite for a reason. If you love this style, then it's hard not to recommend it. Just go in with a forgiving attitude. And there we wrap up the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, you can like and subscribe and comment and do all the YouTube algorithm stuff, which I hate asking for, but it does actually help. Or you can support on Patreon, and this final section of every video is where I thank my patrons. But before that, if you want to check out more videos in the same vein as this Stranglehold one, I did one on Jet Li Rise to Honor, which is this fantastic martial arts PS2 game that I was really impressed with. I also did one on Wanted Weapons of Fate, which is the Wanted movie game, and I did one on Vin Diesel's Wheelman, which is an endlessly entertaining game in concept. So yeah, thank you for watching, thank you to all my patrons, thank you to the patrons coming up on the screen, and especially thank you to my $5 patrons, Analog Man, Anthony Gallagher, Aradina Varin, Big J, Boggy Online, Connor Salinus, Devin Grandal, Dingo Dangle, Dominic Chikoki, Dopants, Down the Cat Hole, Evil Chicken, I always get this next one wrong, Felipe Magales, Gary Pay, Hazardous Kirby, Ian Lockhart, Jared Kernop, Jay Ghouls, Jenny McGlynn, Kane Ramsey, Kayla, Labcat, Lucas Raysevic, Major 1940, May Aris Mazaki, Melanie G, Michael Brennan, Mini-Me swimmingly happy in proximity to a simile, but he's similarly fidgety while plotting foot-related villainy, Mr. Sunday Movies, Mustache Duct Tape, Oscar, PK Ponky Kong, Patrick Kirst, Peaceful Kumquat, Petersaurus, Puix, Plague, Ritalin for Kids, Ruth Knapman, Salakin Sekwa, Sam King, Scott Hazlitt, Skied Panthera, Spoofer, Tia, Test Drive Unlimited 2, The Last Great Opium Den, Titch, Traplaw Ross, Trevor Corbin, Trixie Emerson, Wastelander997, and Zindictive. Thank you all, as usual, for watching. That list is absurdly long, and I'm starting to get concerned that it's so long that it's taking up too much of the video, but yeah, I guess I am endlessly thankful for all of you for supporting this channel. Even if you're not a Patreon, just thank you for watching. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video, which will be probably on James Bond on the Game Boy, on the original Game Boy. So yeah, take care and see you all then. Bye.